Philip and I had the opportunity to speak with three of the cast members from the Chimes of Midnight: Lennox Greaves, Sue Wallace, and Robert Curbishley. So I'm going to bring that interview to you right now. Hope you enjoy it.
So 20 years ago this month, Big Finish's most well-known and probably most popular show of all time, The Chimes of Midnight, is celebrating its lovely anniversary. And tonight we have three of the stars from that program with us. So please welcome Robert Curbishley, Sue Wallace, and Lennox Greaves. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone.
You're very welcome.
That's well, nice to be here.
Excellent. Robert, let's just start with you. Just tell us a bit about where you are at the moment in the world.
I'm in my spare bedroom, sat on my spare bed, and I'm in Watford, which is where I live now and have done for sort of 10 years, yes.
Have you been thrown out of the main bedroom for a reason and you have to go to the spare bedroom?
Oh God, is it that obvious? It must be the hair that does it. No, it's just it's this classic where to find the best signal in the house nonsense. And as fast as Virgin is, their Wi-Fi is not the best. So if we want sort of peace and quiet and a consistent signal, this is the best place.
We all play the signal space wherever we go. That's great. And Sue and Lennox, where are you calling from?
We're in our middle bedroom for exactly the same reason as Robert is with Virgin Media in Northampton, where we've lived for 20 odd years, 30 years actually. 30, oh, right. Yeah, 30 we moved out of London after we had our daughter because we couldn't afford a property there, so with a garden, so we came up here.
Excellent. Now, Lennox and Sue, in the Chimes of Midnight, you are playing a butler and the cook of the house. What's it like to work? At the time, you weren't married. I believe it's a more recent thing. Well, congratulations on your recent marriage.
We've been together for 40 years, but we just didn't quite get it together to get married. It took me a long time to decide if I thought it was, I wasn't sure.
So after 40 years, you thought there's a good chance that you're compatible now?
We also had 2 children by the time we did Chimes of Midnight. So, I don't know why it took us so long.
Why did you decide to find each other not?
We originally didn't get married because the accountant a long time ago said, no, you mustn't ever get married because that's how it was then. It was better not to be married. Tax-wise. Then it became, I think what happened was that it suddenly became clear it would be better if we were married. So that was one reason. But there was also a reason we decided, well, we might as well, really. You couldn't find anybody better. But also, after having made this decision, we then talked to our accountant about something else altogether. And he just came up in conversation. He said, oh, that's nonsense. You don't need to be married at all. He said, what? So we're not looking into divorce yet. No.
So it wasn't a matter of if you can work for a Big Finish production, you can live through anything?
No, not quite. Actually, what I do remember about doing that show was we recorded it in Bristol. That's right, isn't it, Robert? And my brother lived down there, so we had a very nice couple of days down there and a break from the children. I do recall that, and we did two. We actually did 2 scripts that time, so we were there for a couple of days.
What, did we do?
Yeah, we did 2.
Oh, cool. Yes, Seasons of Fear was the other one you did.
Yes, yeah. And Barney, who directed it, I've since worked with him as an actor. But you knew Barney through who, Barnaby? Through his partner, Nick Pegg, who has got Big Finish connections, as you will know, obviously.
And Dalek ones.
Yes. Well, they are famed for playing Daleks. Yes, absolutely.
But now, where was I in my cycle then? I directed 10 pantomimes at Harrogate Theatre in the north of England, which Nick Pegg wrote. And that was how we came to know each other. And it must have been that connection that somehow I got dragged into Big Finish. I have no clear recollection why. But I did 3, 4, 5 Big Finishes, I think. But,
you did 8, actually.
Oh, there you are. You know more than we do.
No, that's no. Well, yeah. Actually, some of them have been a double. You did some Bernie Summerfields, and some Doctor Who,
yes.
and
yes. But all I would say, I mean, your
comment. I know it was a joke, Dwayne, but the thing about doing Big Finish is I enjoyed every single one, and it was a really good. It was a very enjoyable thing to do, and you had a great time with the casts, and meeting different people was lovely. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Well, you met a few Doctor Who's, didn't you? You didn't just meet Paul.
Well, yeah.
Colin Baker and Peter Davison you also worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, didn't I do a Sylvester one as well?
Oh, you did too,
Sylvester.
yes.
Yes.
I
can't remember, did I do any more? Or did I just do those two?
No, you did two more as well.
yeah, I thought I had done another.
You do one
We're
other
getting
one.
very old, No,
I mean, this is just like a day or two's work, isn't it, for you guys? And it's a long time ago. So no, and once again, you both worked together on. It's called The Whispering Forest, which was a Peter Davison story with Janet Fielding, Mark Strickson, and Sarah Sutton. You were both in that together.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Where did we do that? In London?
Yeah, presumably.
I do remember the Chimes of Midnight more. I think it's probably because we went to Bristol to do it.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember those two quite specifically and working with Paul.
The one as you seem to know everything, the first one I did, which I have no memory of what it was called or anything.
The Shadow of the Scourge.
The Shadow of the Scourge. Now, I remember that most vividly of all of them because I seem to remember that I had to transform from being an alien businessman, from being a northern businessman into an alien insect in about 3 seconds, which was just fantastic.
With some of the most gross sound effects ever, as your body gets cracked into an insect-like figure, and you are rebirthed into a huge insect. Yes. Now, Robert, do you know how you came to how did you come to work with Big Finish?
I came to it sort of even more circuitously, really. A very good and old friend of mine, Mark Wright, who writes and produces Big Finish now. So we know each other from Halifax. We went to school together, grew up, blah blah blah. And Mark has always been a Doctor Who fan and just gravitated into sort of around Big Finish. So through fandom he knew Gary and then Gary was setting it up and we got introduced. And Gary, when I became a professional actor, just took pity upon me and fed me small morsels and just and gave me a couple of roles, and which was absolutely lovely. And it's interesting you saying that it's just a couple of days' work, but never underestimate a couple of days' work. It's you live for those moments, it's not just the money. It's just sort of being. It's the whole thing, and the thing about recording audios as well. There's no pressure of learning lines, and you can, as long as your sight reading's okay, you can just give yourself over. The hardest thing is learning to turn the script without making a noise, and so there's very little pressure, and it's an awful lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, these days they try and encourage the performers to use iPads, so they don't have the rustle of the pages. But back then, they wouldn't have been so much in use.
Never even heard of an iPad, or indeed,
absolutely
not. No.
Yeah, I mean, Apple were those big coloured computers around that time. I would have thought, sort of 2000, 2001, whatever it was.
So, Robert, had you worked with either Lennox or Sue before Big Finish?
No, I mean that's. I think this is the one and only time we've worked together. I may have catered for you because one of the things I ended up doing was doing catering for Big Finish for a while. Oh yeah, for me. So yeah, no, but I think this was the only time we'd worked together, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
So what? I mean, what's that an actual day look like for you as an actor? This was in Bristol, so you were put up in Bristol. I assume you were put in Bristol because at that stage Paul McGann had only just started working for Big Finish, and they really wanted to keep him, and they weren't sure whether he would actually do much. And so everything was being done to keep him on side, including shipping all the people
he was living in Bristol. I don't know whether he still lives in Bristol, but he was certainly living in Bristol then. So it was a convenience for him, really, for it to be recorded there. And it was rather nice for us to actually get out of London and, Northampton, in fact, and go down there for a few days. Especially as Lennox was at drama school in Bristol, so it was, going down old haunts.
So what does a Big Finish day look like? Can you remember? How would the day work?
We got to the studio at a set time, probably 10 or 9:30.
Yeah.
And I can't remember whether we did a read through.
I can't imagine we did a read.
I don't think there's time to do that.
No. The way I kind of remember it is you turn up, you all have coffee, you introduce yourselves, you say, you have a little chat, and then you get called variously into the booths and you just start doing it.
That's
it. Lunch, and I think on that first day it got very weird because when at lunch, didn't Simon, Pegg, and Jessica? Oh God, my names are terrible. Simon Pegg definitely turned up on one of those 2 days that we were down there doing it.
That's right. I do remember that. Now you say it, I remember it. Yes. Gosh.
Yeah, and then you work till sort of 5-6 o'clock. Then you go for a little drink. Then I don't even remember where I stayed. Actually, and then you repeat the go home.
I've got a feeling we stayed at my brother's. I don't think we were put up somewhere. I don't recall that.
I don't either. Not at all. God.
And if we were staying overnight, one would have thought they would put us up somewhere. But anyway, I think we stayed at my brother's, which was very nice for us.
Yeah.
I mean, it should have been 4 days recording because the length of the 2 stories usually. It's usually a day per 60 minutes.
As I recall, it was 2.5 days, and there was almost a problem because Paul, the final half day was a Saturday, and Paul had not realised that he was actually called on the Saturday and was supposed to be going back to Liverpool for a big family gathering. So he wasn't too thrilled. I don't know whether you remember that, Robert, but I do. He wasn't too thrilled. He did, and I think they hurried it along so that he could finish by lunchtime so he could get to Liverpool for the rest of the day, as it were.
I don't remember. I do remember Paul. Paul was very quiet. He was very, very quiet during the whole. He'd just sit in a corner of the paper and occasionally drop it and offer a comment. And he was never unfriendly. He was never unprofessional. Just very, very. Very, very quiet. I don't remember that at all. It rings a very.
I do. I remember he was completely thrown when he was told we were doing Saturday as well, and that was because there was a big family party of some sort up in Liverpool, and of course they're the McGanns are a very kind of big Liverpool family. All 4 boys are all actors.
All actors, all big,
and musicians as well.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he did get away and get to it, but I think he was hoping he'd be setting off either Friday night or first thing on Saturday.
So they most likely just recorded all his scenes first and then finished off the scenes without him? Is that?
I don't think so. I don't. I think did they do them in order, Robert? Did they do the scenes in order?
Oh, gosh, I think that
Not always, but I think maybe with recording they do.
I'm pretty sure they did them in order where they could. I know that they can obviously record out of order, but I'm fairly sure that wherever it was done like a play, you just kind of rolled, and then people were in and out the booth all the time.
Yeah, and that way at least you had some sort of thread of what the plot was. When it was complicated enough as it was.
I was going to say, so how on earth did we know what we were doing?
There must be other plays you've done, Lennox, where you don't actually know what you're doing, though, aren't there?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm used to doing, working for 6 weeks and not knowing what I'm doing. I suppose if you're just there for a morning or a day, it doesn't matter.
As long as you're giving the director what he wants. Barnaby seemed very pleased. I remember that.
Yeah, I said to you via message, Philip, that I have virtually no memory of it at all. Apart from the fact that I did get the vibe that it was regarded, even as we were doing it, as one of the better scripts they'd had, and that the feeling about it was very good. And everybody seemed very pleased about what was going on. To my embarrassment, I essayed a gentle Irish accent, which I wouldn't want to listen to again.
We must listen to it.
No, I don't want to, which I would not have done, I don't think, if I'd thought about it. But
I'm pretty sure you can listen for free on Spotify if you're interested in actually hearing the story.
Oh, I've got a copy of it.
So. Oh, there you go. It's well worth listening to. Yeah, in terms of the quality of the story, I mean, Gary Russell talks about the fact that when the script came in and he read it, he actually read it aloud with Nicholas Briggs and I think Barnaby, and they were just sort of, for timing reasons, they just sort of read the script out loud. And as they read it, the three of them were just going, "This is amazing. This is brilliant. This is great." And Gary begrudgingly sort of thought, "I can't direct everything of Paul McGann in the season. Okay, I'll hand this one over to Barnaby," which he still says he regrets that he handed over, because now, as I said, it's now regarded as if anyone ever says, "What should I listen to with Big Finish?" usually the first one they say is this Chimes of Midnight. Can I say, in terms of actors, I mean, the three of you just had, the five of you in the cast, really, because there was also another Louise Rofe playing Edith and Juliette Warner playing Mary. So the five of you were the downstairs, but you all had this really strong rapport that comes out in terms of the relationship. And I guess Lennox and Sue have got an advantage of being in a relationship together already. But how is it that actors manage to pull together rapport if you haven't met before, you haven't actually spent much time? Do you know what it is that actually allows actors to get in a sound booth and relate, where when other people try and do it, it just doesn't happen?
Well, that's interesting, actually, because I think it's part of the joy of the job, actually, that often, hopefully, you meet people, whatever it might be. It might be recording something, or it might be, starting rehearsing a play. And the thing gels. Now, it doesn't always work out that way. There can be, people in a company that won't play the game, as it were, that have a different kind of agenda, and that can spoil it. So there's a lot of luck involved in that, I think. And I think, in a way, maybe Barnaby's casting was good. I think you've got to rely on a director being able to cast well and hoping that the cast will gel together. I remember the people being very good fun to be with that day. And as you say, Robert, Paul was a little bit more distant, but that's just Paul.
Well, you also expect, as you just said, all actors are very different, and Paul McGann was a sort of already a leading man who quite clearly, and you pick it up very quickly, was not really interested in the minutiae of anything else apart from just going into the booth and doing the words, whereas most of the rest of us would probably chat about, hello. Any gathering, especially of actors, even at a read-through or in a thing like that, starts off with, "How did you get here today?" "Well, I came on the M1. "Oh, no. What you should have done was A46 and then 5 then you go round there. "Oh, God, no. I want to."
It's a very British thing.
So it's a very British thing. So you just start off like that, and then everybody's got the Guardian or whatever, and the crosswords start and all that sort of thing. And I found doing audio, I did quite a lot of audio at Pebble Mill when the BBC was still there, that I got to meet actors who I'd always hugely respected, who I would probably never have met before. And nearly always they were really, really nice. And that's such a rewarding experience when you meet somebody that you really respect and you come away without that being tarnished at all.
I also think Robert's right in saying that with audio, you don't have to learn the lines. So there's a lot of pressure off you.
Yeah.
You can relax a lot more. I think a lot more than even going to a read-through for a theatre play, where you're going to have to start performing it, and there's a pressure on you even at the read-through. Whereas you don't have to learn the lines. You can get in the booth and you can be directed by, Barnaby or whoever is directing it. And Bob's your uncle, really. It's a much more relaxed environment. So that, I think, that helps a lot with the audio work.
On that note of with Paul, you've got to remember as well that at the time Paul hadn't wanted to touch. This is how I heard the story. Paul hadn't wanted to touch Doctor Who at all. He'd done the big TV special. What was that, Philip? Was it the 40th anniversary special or something?
It was 1996. It was just they were planning to revive a whole series filmed in Canada, in America, or North America anyway. And so they made the movie as a pilot, and then it hadn't been picked up.
So I think he kind of, maybe his fingers were burnt a little bit by it not being picked up, or whatever it was. He hadn't really wanted to touch it. So it was a massive coup for them to get.
Yeah.
You know, they were very, very accommodating, and I think why he was possibly very quiet, because he wasn't sure whether he wanted to do it. You know, it was a bit of pocket money for him. And you know, since he obviously enjoys doing it, because I don't think he stopped doing them yet, has he?
No, he's still doing
so
them.
I mean, that you must remember that as well. But yeah, okay. Well, I mean, which says an awful lot, sort of 20 years down the line. Yeah, but sure. the other thing that you asked the question about how do actors, how do we sort of build that rapport so quickly? I mean, apart from the bleeding obvious, it's just what you do. You've got to remember, either through experience or through going to drama school, you spend, you know, your time not being humiliated, but forcing yourself into situations where you have to shed any kind of the usual sort of expectations and behaviours that in normal society you are thrust together with a bunch of people. And if that means you have to, after 2 hours, you have to go and kiss somebody, or you have to get very physical with somebody, this is just what you have to do, and you can't afford to be a shrinking violet. And it's just, otherwise you're just never going to work, and it's never going to feel comfortable. So we're very free of inhibitions, or hopefully very free of inhibitions, or at least they're under control, even if you're not free of them. So I mean that's and if you're working in booths, you don't even have it's absolutely fine, because you're purely connecting sort of hourly anyway. You're not even having to connect physically. It's just about tuning in to what's going on and reacting to that. I really loved work. I love doing voice work. It's you really can sort of concentrate on that minutiae of people's different tones, and you just don't. There's no other work where you get to do that. I mean, in theatre, it's much bigger. TV, I wouldn't claim to have had the experience really to have mastered it, but it's very, very different.
Mm-hmm. It is, and I've done some radio work, which is similar, but there is that feeling, though. I mean, I remember the last thing I did, it was an Alan Bennett thing, and Alex Jennings was playing Alan Bennett in it, actually. And he walked up, I remember him walking in on the day, and he's great, Alex, great fun, and just saying, "Oh, do you know, I just love doing radio." And it's because there's something that happens when you're doing audio work where you're shed of anxiety. It's a much, I wouldn't say it was an easier thing to do, but there's something that's more relaxed about it. So you are, and your inhibitions are just shed away, I think.
There's one cast member that we haven't mentioned yet, and she was relatively new off the blocks at the time, and that's India Fisher. How did she come across to you, Sue?
Oh, she was great. She was lovely. I mean, I don't remember a huge amount about her. I mean, I don't know what she's doing now. Has she gone on to great things?
Yeah, she does all sorts of voice stuff.
She's the voice of MasterChef.
So India is one of the funniest people I've ever met.
Yeah, she was great fun. I remember that.
What can I say about her? She's a good actress. I mean, that voice. I mean, there's a reason why she's been the voice of MasterChef for so long. It's a very, very distinctive sound that she's got. But I mean, I keep saying it, but never underestimate the power of humour. She's very warm, very funny, and she's good at what she does.
Yeah, I had the privilege of meeting India when she came to Australia. We actually flew out for a convention out here, and so I got to interview her, and she's a lot of fun and a bit crazy. But it's often hard to tell with actors, because sometimes you guys just know how to put things on.
Yeah.
I just wanted to just mention a few other bits and pieces. Lennox, I know for a while it was Coronation Street you were working for. Was that right?
No, I've never done Coronation Street.
I've done Coronation Street.
You were Coronation Street. And yeah. I think Robert was Coronation Street too? Or Emmerdale?
Yeah.
Lennox was Emmerdale.
And you did a day on EastEnders, didn't you?
On the day. The whole episode.
What is the role of the soap? Did you call them soap? What do you call them in
soap operas? Yeah,
you call them soap operas over there. What is the role of soap operas in the UK for the UK actor?
Well, if you're in them permanently, it's a big breadwinner.
Loads of money.
It's lots of money. It's not actually as good now for guest people going in. Everything has had to be economy has gone on big time in some of them. So the first time I did Coronation Street when I was much younger, playing a very young housewife as a sort of little guest appearance, it was a completely different world then. You went into the studio at Granada, the old studio at Granada, and the regular characters had little spaces, little desks and booths around the room where they could learn their lines. And then, you would go onto the set and do your bit. I mean, obviously, as a guest, I didn't have that. I must have had a dressing room somewhere, I guess. The most recent times that I did it, when I was much older, it's basically learn the lines and shoot it. There's no rehearsal, it's straight on. And a completely different world now than it used to be. I mean, it's still got a huge following, Coronation Street, but a very different world. The people who are regulars in it earn a lot of money. It used to be that even as a guest, you would do quite well out of it. And they would pay expenses and put you up in a nice hotel. The last time I went to Manchester, I had to find my own accommodation, and they gave me a small budget, which wasn't really enough to cover a hotel. So that it's not as good as it used to be. I don't know whether it's different on the other soaps, but it's a much tougher world now because they have to pay their regulars such a lot of money that the guests don't get to be paid a lot, unless maybe you're a big name. I mean, Ian Mckellen went on it, didn't he? I can't imagine he did it for nothing.
I think I did three or four episodes, tiny scenes, probably about 18, 20 years ago. And exactly what Sue said. I mean, I found it quite brutal. The cast were lovely. You turn up in the green room, everybody's freaky for a start. I don't really do soaps. I've never enjoyed watching them or anything. So other people get far more excited than I got being on it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, having a job is wonderful, but the fact it's Corrie is kind of like meh. But you turn up, the cast are lovely, but it's you go to costume, you go get your makeup done, you hang around. Robert, your scene, bish bash bosh, you're done, and that is it. I mean, I've heard that obviously I'm not acting anymore, but I've heard that money has gone down and down and down. And particularly for things like adverts as well. But TV is. Unless you are one of those actors who instantly translate, it is a skill you have to learn. And the more you do, and one of the great things I think about being in a soap, if you can escape the gravitational pull of a soap and get out of your typecast, of which there are a few or more and more actors doing it, the great joy, I guess, of doing them is that you get an incredible amount of experience in front of a camera, and you get to know what works and what doesn't work. You get to have to learn scripts very, very quickly. But otherwise, if you're doing a bit part, as they used to say, a bit part, if you've got a bit part on anything, then it is quite, even back then, it's just like everyone's very lovely. You turn up, you film it, and then you spat out, and that's it.
And it's much more nerve-wracking, isn't it, than doing an audio? Because the pressure is on you to get your lines right. You're working with people who are doing this every day, and they really know their stuff, so that I feel it's more pressured.
They're not interested in your motivation. They're interested in getting everything they have to get filmed for the day done.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
So what other ways do you think that the whole profession has changed over the last 20, 30 years? I mean, you've all got lots of depth of experience. What have you seen has changed? Anything good for the better?
Well, just actually going back to link up with what was said before, I found as a mainly theatre actor that as time has gone on, there is less and less and less theatre work. There's less work of any sort. So that when I was young and you would join a theatre company, you could nearly always guarantee there were one or two people in it who were deeply unpleasant, and that you would have quite a hard time having to sort out who was okay and who wasn't okay. Now you get a theatre job, you go along, and you usually have a very good time because there's so little work that everybody is so pleased to be working that they tend to think, yes, let's just do this and have a good, it's going to be great. And I find that quite a lot, actually, that the old days, that also maybe could be something to do with me getting old.
Well, if you're finding people more pleasant, that's the opposite of getting old, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be.
Also, you used to start in the theatre and you'd get a job which wasn't just one play. You'd do a season, which meant that you learned an awful lot more about your craft, actually, from older actors who were there within the company. That's a rarity now, an absolute rarity. It's all one play at a time, And I think, if I did a year at a regional rep when I started out, and I learned so much from doing that. I mean, and it's like doing an apprenticeship. It's complete joy. And also you make friends for life from that experience. The other thing that I think has changed radically, and it's been even more enforced through the COVID problem, is that now you don't get to meet people for auditions as much. Everything is done on Zoom. Or you have to do self-tapes, which we're all going nuts about. They send you a bit of script, they tell you what you should be wearing, you've got to film it at home, and I think it's become much less personal. I feel that we're much more of a commodity now than I ever used to feel. I don't know whether, I think you agree with that.
That's what everybody says now.
And we are all getting very tired of it. I mean, it was a great thing to go and to an audition and meet somebody and prepare something. Now you're sort of doing something in the front bedroom and hoping you've got the background right and the light right. It's awful.
I've now become an accomplished director of Sue's self-tapes. But as she says, we send them off into the ether and you never hear anything back half the time.
It's disgraceful.
Rude, apart from
I don't mind if they say yes or no, but to get nothing is appalling, and the commercials are the worst for that.
I mean, I think Equity are onto it, but Equity,
Yeah, they're trying to get things changed. I mean, you're supposed to be given 4 days to do it. Half the time they're asking you to do it by tomorrow and send it in, So that's something that has changed really, really radically, actually. And particularly during the pandemic, it's become more exacerbated.
I mean, I'm full of admiration for anybody who stays in it, because, of course, I've been out of it since sort of 2006. And one of the things that I just found, it defeated me for various different reasons, was the fact that you might have worked a couple of times that year, and then you get a call from somebody, you go into an audition, they haven't got a clue, and they're not interested in who you are at all. There's just, and you're starting from, so you're having to explain from absolute scratch, what you've done, trying to sell yourself again, particularly with TV. And I guess that's the nature of the business. If you don't like it, tough, and do what I've done, which is to leave. But I mean, I've got friends who are still in it, and they're still working. They're generating their own work. That's always a good thing to do. But I hear about all of this now. When I left, it was very much an analog industry. You sent in physical photographs still. We hadn't even got to the stage where you emailed a photograph in, because that wasn't quite there. Certainly, you didn't record. You actually, it was always, there was some kind of physical audition. You'd turn up, you'd do the hands, do your profile, whatever. It's changed out of all recognition now. From what I've heard.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe it'll maybe get back to being similar within the theatre, but there's less work in the theatre. I mean, I think the theatre has really, really been hit hard by the pandemic. I think you will meet up with people again for auditions for that. But as far as telly and commercials are concerned, it's all self-taping now. Which I don't hate doing the self-tapes, but I hate the fact that it's all, you're in a bubble. You know, you don't know what's going on, who you're doing it for, and what the outcome will be. And half the time, you never do find out.
How as actors do you deal with rejection? Because I mean, that's a huge part of, you keep putting yourselves out all the time for the next role, the next job. And, you know, I guess most of the time you're going to actually be rejected. How do you actually deal? I mean, let's assume you've both had huge, long careers in acting. Have you dealt with a lifetime of people saying, no, you're not right?
It's not a problem. Just get used to it.
You get used to it. I think, yeah. I mean, it's very hard when you start out. I mean, you know, it's really painful. And it can still be painful as you get older. If it's a part you're particularly interested in, you know, you still feel, oh, that's a real shame, you know, but you get hardened to it. Otherwise, you'd never stay in the profession. Because I think you've got to be able to sustain that. You've got to be able to take the blows in order to keep going.
I recommend crying and drinking. They're two great ways to deal with it.
Yes.
It's exhausting. I mean, it can be exhausting. If you, you guys have, I don't know how many years, 40 years to say you've been actors. Is that correct?
Yes. But not been doing very much of late though, Robert, I can tell you.
No, well, but I mean, you know, there were times when literally you can't afford the bus fare, or you can't afford a can of pop. You don't know where the rent's going to come from. All of these things kind of, they add up, and they can be absolutely exhausting. And it's no surprise that I think the industry has moved yet again towards people of independent wealth, because it's just, if you've got no pressure of money, then you've got no pressure. You can afford to just wait for that audition, or to do a class, do this, do that. You don't have to be finding a job. As ever with, because of course I work in food now, and the other great mistake people make is thinking that being a chef is glamorous, in the same way that they think being an actor is glamorous. It only gets to be glamorous when you are being invited to the event. And I suspect even if you're being invited to the events and photographed on the red carpet, all the different pressures. So it's the way the media sell it. It's just it's a way for them to sell papers, or to to get people to watch the news bulletins. It's not a glamorous lifestyle, particularly when you're lower down the ladder. It's hard.
Yes, it is hard. I feel incredibly sorry for the young actors who are coming out of drama school now. And there's far too many of them going in, really. You know, the drama schools are making money out of people who can afford to go, who will probably never work, you know, which is terrible.
I worked at Mount View Theatre School, taught. I directed plays for them for 7 years. And one of the reasons I stopped was that I just thought, this is ridiculous. All these kids coming in and going through this pain, all this money to go through this drama school, and they are not going to work, you know. And I could count on the fingers of 2 hands over 7 years the people who actually I ever saw again. 1 or 2 have made it, which is great, but very, 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 very few.
And the postgraduate course
that was
all about who could afford it.
Awful drama schools. Let's take thousands of pounds from weird Mexicans and tell them that we're teaching them acting.
We had a couple of conversations recently. We talked to Bonnie Langford recently, and she was talking about the fact that people assume that there's all this money that she must be getting because she appears on telly and she goes, there's all of the news programs and things. She's just saying, there's so much of what she does that doesn't get paid for at all, but people assume that they see you. But she does all these appearances, but that's all unpaid. All about just making sure you got enough image out there to hopefully get paid next. Yes, and then we're talking to someone else here who appeared on a couple of episodes of Doctor Who, and people just assumed he'd earned so much money that he could start paying their mortgage for them. So he's just sort of saying that the perception that the public have is that if you appear on TV once or you're in something, then you must now be loaded. which of course, isn't the case.
It's absolutely not true.
Robert, you did about 15 different stories for Big Finish over your time. You did, because you did a whole unit series. You did Sarah Jane Smith shows. You did The Adventure of Luther Arthright. You worked with Colin Baker, Peter Davis on a number of occasions. You came back for another Paul McGann. You worked with Bonnie Langford and Sylvester McCoy in The Fires of Vulcan.
Oh my God, yeah, I did. Forgot about that. I tried to find Chimes of Midnight because I've got a physical copy. I don't know where it is, and I actually looked for it online and I couldn't find it. So I'm going to give it a listen to. I did 15. Gary was nice to me, wasn't he? That's news to me. I didn't realise that because I haven't seen my physical copies for so long. I didn't realise I'd done that many.
There's 16, I think it is.
Wow. Oh, I'm quite impressed by that. I mean, look, oh, yes. So I did Unit, which was Will. I did a few of those. They're great fun. They're just great fun. And yeah, Chimes of Midnight definitely is one of the best scripts that, regardless that I've ever worked on. It's just a really clever, interesting, very tight little story, but they're great fun to do, and the universe is kind of endless with Doctor Who.
Well, I'd encourage you guys to go have a listen, because we listened again, and I mean I've probably heard it 20-30 times and re-listened again in preparation to talk to you guys and some other stuff we're doing, and it just in terms of the quality of the script that's there, but also it looks at class structure really well. Even the downstairs class structure, because the whole thing about the chauffeur and the scullery maid, and a scullery, there's no way that could possibly ever happen, and and even the whole thing with the cook, and I mean, one of the main catchphrases that you hear Doctor Who fans quoting all the time is "Christmas just wouldn't be Christmas without Mrs. Badley's plum pudding," which is something that's repeated. It's said about 30 or 40 times during the course of the play. Because one of the things that Robert Shearman does is he keeps using catchphrases over and over again, like a children's storybook, to make the characters become more and more terrifying as things go on. And Lennox, you don't become a giant evil bug in this one, but you do get taken over by an evil house.
Yes.
So you actually has to portray all sorts of alien evilness along the course of the production.
It's very easy to mock when you've got fandom like this, but I don't think it should ever be underestimated. I remember meeting Mark Wright. This must be even pre-2000. I remember meeting him in a pub in Soho. There was lots of people, lots of Doctor Who fans used to meet there every so often. I can't remember the group, and I remember meeting there, and this was 2005 was when it was relaunched, Doctor Who. When did Gary launch? Was it 1999? Gary launched Big Finish. Is that correct? Yep. So in this pub, there were a whole bunch of people who went on to write. All of their names I can't remember. Steve Moffat was there long before he got his hands on Doctor Who, but he was already. I think he was already writing for TV by then. Obviously, there was Gary, and I remember sitting in a room at somebody's house in Bath with Gary and him talking about what starting Big Finish. So it's being kept alive by people who creatively and sort of organizationally are very, very energetic and very committed, and it's a very sort of strange but gratifying sort of universe to get involved in. I mean, my daughter loves Doctor Who, absolutely loves it, and she's not heard any of the stuff that I've been in with Big Finish because I can't find them. I don't know where they are. So I'm going to look for...
You must.
What is also interesting is that both Sue and I have been in plays actually together when you do you give your all for your art during the course of the evening, and then in the bar afterwards, there's two guys stood there with a huge cardboard cutout of something to do with Doctor Who that you were once involved in. Said, "Could you sign this, please?"
I was really surprised.
But I've just been head of Gardner. What did you think of that? Oh, I didn't see that. Will you just sign this, please?
There's lots of people who turn up at stage doors.
Well, I was at the National not long ago, playing absolutely nothing. I remember coming out afterwards and being mobbed by Doctor Who fans. And Mark Strong, who was playing the lead, a lovely, lovely guy, came out and sort of stood next to me and said, "What's going on, Lennox?" I said, "Oh, sorry, just carry on, Mark. I'm busy.
I'm busy doing autographs." But really, the Whoies are extraordinary because they'll come all over, they'll travel just to get signatures from Len and I, who were basically just in an audio version of this, you know, which amazed me. I remember a couple of guys came down to, where was I working at? That little theatre.
Was it the Mill at Sonning?
The Mill at Sonning. Yeah. And they'd come down from London just because I was in this play and they knew that I'd been in the Big Finish products. And they wanted me out, and then they said they were so disappointed because they'd been to the National the night before to try and get somebody's autograph, and the play wasn't on. They got the wrong night, and they were so disappointed. But I just was astonished. They didn't come to see the play. They just came all the way down to Sonning just to get my autograph.
Keep in mind that Big Finish have done thousands of productions. And Chimes of Midnight is regularly regarded as the best out of all these thousands of productions. So you shouldn't be too surprised that people are coming.
Well, no, perhaps not. But I was. I was surprised at how far they travelled for it.
And then you have these two crazy Australians hunting you down, wanting you to come on.
I've got this message from some bloke in Australia. What's this?
He said, "Should I reply?" I said, "Yeah, you should reply."
My mate Mark tells this story about he was one of those beautiful serendipitous moments. He was walking past, I think, was it the National? I think it was the National. Tom Baker did something a good few years ago at the National, and as he came out the stage door, he had a couple of Doctor Who fans waiting there with their scarves on and their hats and everything, and they simply, I think they offered up. They just sort of said, would you mind? He went, "Oh, go and bother a proper actor," and then off he walked, and that was.
Well, I seem to remember every time I did a Big Finish, there was always part of the chat was whether or not they were getting any further in getting Tom Baker to appear. And I presume they never did.
No, they've got him. They've had him for the last 10 years.
Oh, and sorry, right. Well,
and he's recorded enough material for the next 7 or 8 years. So they are putting things in the can in the preparation for him not being here anymore, and they're getting further and further ahead. So even after he's just celebrated a 10-year anniversary, and they've got years and years to come yet for after he's gone.
That's true.
Yes, okay, we are a bit crazy. I mean, sorry, there's something about Doctor Who fans that we try and pretend we're trying to pretend we're quite normal here, can I just point out. So thanks for pointing out all our foibles. We really appreciate that so much. Listen, can I just say thank you so much for your time. Can I say, listen, I mean, I was hoping to get, if you got a few remembrances from your 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to be happy. And can I just say, I've had the best time. So thank you so much. Okay. And I mean, yes, and thank you for your careers long. I know COVID's been particularly hard for actors. I think one of the things we appreciate about Big Finish is the fact that, I mean, I'm sure they don't pay extraordinary amounts, but the fact that they've actually kept ticking over throughout all of COVID, and the writers, the actors, the directors, it's a huge production that they continue to do, and it's great that the fans are supporting them, and as a business venture they're able to keep going and keep being creative. But it's really down to actors such as yourselves who come in, do something for a couple of days, and still get remembered years later. So
that's extraordinary.
It's very much a craft you're creating which lives on long after you.
Yes, I mean,
we appreciate.
Nobody remembers my performance in Harrogate in 1970-something as Inspector Slack in Murder at the Vicarage, but Chimes of Midnight, hey, it's great.
I was still in nappies. Lennox, you say the slight Irish accent. You sound very much like Adrian Dunbar to me.
Oh,
well,
that's flattering.
I could have sworn, I looked at the cast list a while back. I thought, this is Adrian Dunbar, and I got a big shock.
If only you'd had his career, then.
Yes, I know.
Thank you so much, Lennox, Sue, and Robert, for taking the time to chat with Philip and I on the 20th anniversary of the release of the Chimes of Midnight. We really appreciate it.